as Lou had indicated, this is the 17th year that I get to stand on this bima on Rosh Hashanah morning and deliver my holiday sermon. I think back to the first time I got to share this moment with you all, and of course with Laurel and Anna, and I'm filled with much gratitude and appreciation for the incredible gift of this community. There are many benefits to such a longevity, but like a couple that has been happily together for many years, you may have to listen to the same jokes more than once, or twice, or, oh well. So a new rabbi arrives to the community and gives a sermon on Shabbat. Okay, everybody likes it, not bad. And then people come back the next Shabbat, and the rabbi stands up and delivers the same sermon word for word. Everyone's a little puzzled. So, of course, what happens in those moments, they go to the president and they pull the president aside and they say, what gives? And the president says, I don't know, let's wait and see what happens next week. So the next week the rabbi arrives and delivers the same sermon word for word. At which point the president goes to the rabbi after the service, pulls aside, Rabbi, that was such a wonderful, wonderful sermon. Thank you so much. Do you think that maybe next week you can give us something, a different sermon, perhaps? And the rabbi says, did you hear what the sermon was about? Yes, of course, urging us to do this and this and that. Have you started doing all of these things? When you start doing all of these things, I will write a different sermon. In his first recorded statement in the Mishnah, Hillel, a Jewish sage, about 2,000 years ago, said, Al tifros min hatzibur. Do not separate yourself from the community. That's literally the first record of what Hillel taught. A modern scholar of Mishnah, Dr. Joshua Kolb, explains, Hillel's first statement means that a person should join the community for both its celebrations and for its trials and tribulations. This has also been understood as the reason for praying together as a community. For when one prays by themselves, they might ask for things that are detrimental to some. But the community only prays for things which are of benefit to everybody. A reed on its own is easily broken, but a bundle of reeds standing together cannot be broken even by the strongest winds. In his book, Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell tells the story of Rosetta val Fortore, a small village that lies 100 miles southeast of Rome in the Apennine foothills. Narrow stone steps run up the hillside, flanked by closely clustered two-story stone houses with red tile roofs. For centuries, the Paesani of Rosetta worked in the marble quarries in the surrounding hills, or cultivated the fields in the terraced valley below, walking 4 and 5 miles down and up the mountain each day. Life was hard. The townsfolk were barely literate and desperately poor, and without much hope for economic betterment, until word reached Rosetta at the end of the 19th century of the land of opportunity across the ocean. The first immigrants from Rosetta found jobs in the slate quarry near the town of Bangor, Pennsylvania. And soon one group of Rosettans after another packed their bags and headed to Pennsylvania until the initial stream of immigrants became a flood. The Rosettans began buying land on the rocky hillside connected to Bangor by a steep, rutted wagon path. They built closely clustered two-story stone houses with slate roofs on narrow streets running up and down the hillside. In the beginning, they called their town New Italy, but soon changed it to Rosetta, which seemed only appropriate given that almost all of them had come from the same village in Italy. Neighboring Bangor was largely Welsh and English, and the next town over was overwhelmingly German, which meant, given the fractious relationships between English and Germans and Italians in those years, that Rosetto stayed strictly for Rosettans. Fast forward to mid-1950s, when a visiting medical researcher, Dr. Wolf, was invited to give a talk at the local medical society. where he met a local doctor who shared with him something peculiar. While his patients came from all over the area, he noticed that he rarely found patients from Roseto under the age of 65 with heart disease. Wolf was taken aback. This was the 1950s, years before the advent of cholesterol-lowering drugs and aggressive measures to prevent heart disease. Heart attacks were an epidemic in the United States. They were the leading cause of death in men under the age of 65. It was impossible to be a doctor, common sense said, and not see heart disease. So Wolf decided to investigate. He enlisted the support of some of his students and colleagues. They gathered together the death certificates from residents of the town, going back as many years as they could. They analyzed physicians' records. They took medical histories and constructed family genealogies. They invited the entire population of Roseto to be tested. The results were astonishing. In Roseto, virtually no one under 55 had died of a heart attack or showed any signs of heart disease. For men over 65, the death rate from heart disease in Roseto was roughly half of the United States as a whole. The death rate from all causes in Roseto, in fact, was 30 to 35% lower than expected. There was no suicide, no alcoholism, no drug addiction, and very little crime. Then they looked at peptic ulcers. They didn't have any of those either. These people were dying of old age. That's it. So Wolf first thought that the Rosetans must have held on to some dietary practices from the old world that left them healthier than other Americans. But he quickly realized that wasn't true. When dietitians analyzed the typical Rosetans' eating habits, they found that a whopping 41% of their calories came from fat. Nor was this a town where people got up at dawn to do yoga and run a brisk 6 miles. The Pennsylvania Rosetans smoked heavily, and many were struggling with obesity. So if diet and exercise didn't explain the findings, then what about genetics? Wolf tracked down relatives of Rosetans who lived in other parts of the country to see if they shared the same remarkable good health. They didn't. He then looked at the region where Rosetans lived. Maybe there was something about living in the foothills of eastern Pennsylvania that was good for their health. He compared the medical history to 2 nearby towns, both populated by the same kind of hardworking European immigrants. For men over 65, the death rates from heart disease were 3 times that of Roseto. Another dead end. What Wolf and his team began to realize was that the secret of Roseto wasn't diet or exercise or genes or location. It had to be Roseto itself. Walking around the town, they figured out why. They looked at how the Rosetans visited one another, stopping to chat in Italian on the street, or cooking for one another in their backyards. They learned about the extended family clans that underlay the town's social structure. They saw how many homes had 3 generations living under one roof and how much respect grandparents commanded. They went to Mass and saw the unifying and calming effect of the church. They counted 22 separate civic organizations in a town of just under 2,000 people. They picked up on the particular egalitarian ethos of the community, which discouraged the wealthy from flaunting their success and helped the unsuccessful obscure their failures. In transplanting the Paesani culture of southern Italy to the hills of eastern Pennsylvania, the Rosetans had created a powerful protective social structure capable of insulating them from the pressures of the modern world. The Rosetans were healthy because of where they were from, because of the world they had created for themselves in their tiny little town in the hills. Why am I telling you all this? I'm not about to suggest that we all move in together with our families, combining 3 generations under one roof, even though some of us have first-hand experiences of such arrangements, temporary or long-term, and there may be a number of benefits to such a setup. I'm also not a medical doctor, and I strongly suggest that you do not take any medical advice from me. But as I read the story of Roseto, as I read it, I was struck by the simple truth that it can teach us. Community matters. Members of TE live in dozens of local towns. Students of our religious school come from many, many school districts. Trying to schedule a school calendar around them is often quite a challenge. We all live busy lives and often struggle to see even our immediate families, especially if they don't live nearby. We work hard, we volunteer, we try to keep healthy lifestyles. We also have different interests, hobbies, and friends. Did I mention we're busy? We do not live in a small-knit community bumping into each other on our way to work and on our way home, in the supermarket aisles and at local shops and cafes. Yes, I know, almost every visit to Costco for me results in some wonderful interactions with many members of TE and the wider Jewish community, but still, that's more of an exception than the rule. Even though many of us live in the smallish towns, we do not live in the shtetl and certainly not on a kibbutz. To be honest with you, I'm not sure I would want to live in the shtetl. I've always found that the best cure for Fiddler on the Roof nostalgia was a visit to one of those places, especially in the winter. I love my home, and I love the privacy of my home. And yet I also know that the experiences of the close-knit Jewish community can have a profound, lasting impact on all of our lives. When Olga and I first visited TE, we were struck by the way people talked about their synagogue community. We decided then that there were only two reasons this could happen. Either everyone was coached to say exactly the same thing, or there was truly something special about this place. Some people described searching for a community to belong to when they moved here, checking out different synagogues and looking for a good match. Others were not looking for anything, but were invited by friends or just stumbled upon TE. Some felt the time has come to find a place to educate their kids and went to the synagogue that was closest. Whatever the story, they all ended in pretty much the same way. We walked in and we felt immediately at home. Before we turn this into a fairy tale of wishful thinking, we must also acknowledge that there were no doubt others who did not have the same feeling, or those whose family ties, friends, or even simple geography led them to make a different choice, or no choice at all. That's okay. And in fact, that is precisely the reason why I will always advocate for a varied and diverse Jewish community that offers many choices, allowing everyone to find their home. But back to our story. Whatever was the reason that brought you to the doors of this community, you stayed because it resonated with you in a powerful way. That's great news. For a number of years now, I've been sending the welcome message to the new members of TE that contains a version of this sentence. I invite you to come meet with me so that we can get to know each other and together find ways to make your membership the most meaningful it can be. We're all on this journey together, and community requires intentionality. When I read the story like that of Rosetto in the hills of Pennsylvania, I don't yearn for the old world. The world of Tavia the milkman had its own profound challenges and complexity that does not fully come through the Fiddler on the Roof on Broadway. And as a side note, I highly recommend going back and reading Shalom Aleicham's original stories of Tevye, filled with humor and really tough questions of tradition and modernity and pain and suffering and, yes, beauty of this lost world. Some of us may have experienced living in densely populated multi-generational homes and poverty and know firsthand that we should not romanticize it. But stories like this serve as a powerful reminder to me of why Temple Emmanuel and countless communities like ours have been created in the first place. They offer us an opportunity to design the tools that we need to live happy, engaged, and fulfilling Jewish lives. Not in some romanticized world of yore that may or may not have existed, but here in the 21st century New Haven, where we navigate the very modern reality and all of its challenges and complexities. Make no mistake, I don't ignore the reality. We are overwhelmed, overstretched, overprogrammed, and overextended. If you are not actively raising children in this moment, I recommend inviting someone who does for a quick cup of coffee and asking them to share their weekly schedule. Chances are you will be in complete shock by the time they have reached Wednesday. Those caring for aging parents often carry an immense burden, and some are in the so-called sandwich generation, raising young kids and caring for aging parents. And yet the story of Rosetta reminds me that the values of not just building the community, but building our lives around this community is a life-saving device and not just another thing to add to our busy lists. That's the secret. Sharing our lives with others on a regular basis, cooking and sharing meals, interacting, not because we went through months of planning to get together, but because we see each other on Shabbat and festivals, in times and spaces that are already there for the taking. That is not just the secret of healthy mental state, but may also be the very healthy thing to do. And TE is built just for that. We're not a community where you can find a beautifully catered lunch every Shabbat, cooked by professionals and served by well-mannered waiters. We're a community where someone here shows up and sets up chairs and tables. Someone brings whatever dishes they'd like to make. Someone helps park the cars and ensure security. Someone plays with the kids and someone teaches them. Someone makes sure that the building is safe and functional. Someone makes sure the colors on the wall don't clash. Someone makes sure we're financially solvent. Someone makes sure we live by our mission and our values, while also making sure we can keep our doors open. We do this by having a structure of committees and volunteers, but those things only work when all of us find a way to be intentional about it all. Not because we like to add more things to our already overflowing proverbial plate, but because we need it for ourselves. We take care of our physical and mental health. We use various tools that we have access to, regular health checkups, exercise, diet, and other ways we keep ourselves healthy. Perhaps we can also see our synagogue community as one of such tools. So, if this sermon sounds familiar to you, and you feel like you have heard me talk about this before, thank you for listening. I promise you that I'm not reusing my old sermons, even if sometimes I really want to. I don't think that I can ever stop talking about the power of the community. But perhaps if every Shabbat service will begin to look and feel like this, then perchance I can be persuaded to look for other topics. May this be a year filled with peace, good health, and meaning. Shana Tova.